A new twist in the battle between the Trump administration and Harvard University today. The Trump administration's Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism released a letter saying that Harvard is in, quote, violent violation of the Civil Rights Act and threatened further loss of its federal funding. The letter goes on to state that Harvard, quote, has been in some cases deliberately indifferent and in others has been a willful participant in anti-Semitic harassment of Jewish students, faculty, and staff, unquote. Harvard responded that they are, quote, far from indifferent, and they strongly disagree with the report's conclusion. The Wall Street Journal was the first to report on the letter. Joining us now is Cornell University law professor and Harvard law grad, William Jacobson. Professor, thanks for joining us. So Harvard says that they've made significant strides in combating anti-Semitism on campus, including updating its rules around using campus space for protests, taking steps to review disciplinary processes, and expanding training on combating anti-Semitism. From a legal perspective, how does the Trump administration prove that Harvard has been deliberately indifferent, as they put it?
Well, they prove it the way you prove anything, through the facts. And the complaint that was filed, or the letter, was accompanied by an over 50-page report, which had enormous detail on what the government alleges happened and what the government alleges was indifferent in the university's reaction. And boiling it down, the government says Harvard is only now responding because of the pressure, but up until recently had not been taking steps. So the government's going to have to prove it the way you prove anything, through the facts.
And you're a law professor who went to Harvard and you teach at Cornell. What's your take on this? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot to what the government is saying. It's not just at Harvard, it's other places as well. There's a campus climate of intimidation. There's a campus climate of silencing other speech. I think a good analogy might be the so-called heckler's veto, that people certainly have the right to express anti-Israel viewpoints on campus, but they don't have the right to express it in such a manner and such an intimidating factor that they prevent other people from getting an education. And that's essentially what the government is saying, is that the accumulation of almost 2 years of events on the Harvard campus after October 7th is tantamount to depriving Israeli and Jewish students of their right to access an education. And that is the issue. It's not any one statement or any one person, and it's not that the viewpoints expressed can't be expressed, but they can't be expressed in the way they're being expressed, which is intimidation and anti-Semitic actions on campus.
I wonder what you think of how the administration is going about doing this in terms of cutting off funding, because I read a piece in the New York Times yesterday, the Times tracking nearly every grant the Trump administration has canceled at Harvard, and they include a long-term cancer study tracking more than 100,000 women, one related to telemedicine and an opioid addiction, another one that studies advances that could one day enable Navy divers to breathe underwater without oxygen tanks. Do you think that this method of punishment, which it sounds like it could actually hurt humanity in some ways, is the most effective way to do this?
Well, other methods have proven ineffective. I mean, that's the whole point of what the government's doing, is that their attempt to cajole and to talk to Harvard, and particularly Harvard, have been unproductive. And the fact that there might be ancillary research grants that get harmed, Harvard can fund them. There's nothing to prevent Harvard from funding them. But if you're going to take federal money, you have to play by the rules the federal government sets. And those rules are compliance with the Civil Rights Act. So I think it's a little putting things in reverse order to say the government should not be enforcing the Civil Rights Act because some programs which may be worthwhile at Harvard get damaged. The real question is, why isn't Harvard complying? And that's the issue, that Harvard has a long history, at least since October 7th, of being one of, if not the worst campuses. And that's really the question. I don't think Harvard should be able to turn it around and blame the government for enforcing the civil rights laws when Harvard agreed to take the money on the condition of complying with the civil rights laws.
Professor William Jacobson, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Also in our national lead, a frightening trend. Violence has become more and more common as a tool for extremists in the United States, seemingly trying to make some sort of political point, however sick, twisted, or misguided. Just last month, as you'll recall, 2 Israeli embassy staffers were shot and killed here in the nation's capital outside the Jewish Museum by a man yelling "Free Palestine." CNN's Wolf Blitzer sat down with the father of one of the victims.
What will you remember most about Sarah?
Who she is, what she stood for. She did everything. She did all sports. She was theatrical. She sang. She was a beekeeper. She was very into the environment. She would bring stray dogs home. She was a vegetarian.
Because she didn't want to kill animals?
You're right, she didn't want to kill. She loved all animals.
CNN's Tom Foreman takes a look now at the disturbing rise of political violence or terrorism in America.
Stay away, stay away.
Authorities say an 82-year-old woman has died after that attack on pro-Israel demonstrators in Boulder, Colorado, by a man reportedly yelling "Free Palestine," raising the grim toll of political violence. In recent weeks, 2 lawmakers and their spouses were shot in Minnesota, 1 couple killed.
This was a targeted attack against individuals who answered the call to public service.
A man in Memphis was charged after allegedly trying to kidnap that city's mayor. And in Washington, D.C., Free Palestine! Police say this man gunned down this young couple outside a Jewish museum. Sarah Milgram said she saw Nazi graffiti on her Kansas high school years back, sparking early fears.
You know, I worry about going to my synagogue, and now I have to worry about safety at school, and that shouldn't be a thing.
Analysts note opposition anger flared sharply in 2017 ahead of the first inauguration of Donald Trump. 4 years later, when he lost, Trump supporters exploded in violence at the Capitol. And as he fought to retake the office last year, assassination attempts only fed the fury.
You have to go back 50 years to the 1960s to find anything like these violent protests and political assassinations. This is really quite disturbing.
Indeed, U.S. Capitol Police say since 2017, concerning statements and threats against members of Congress, their families and staffs have skyrocketed. There were almost 9,500 last year.
The intensity of what lawmakers are exposed to it just strikes me as being very dangerous.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us, Republican and Democrat, to speak out against political violence, no matter if it's a Republican or Democrat that's targeted.
The reasons for such violence are often murky. When trouble broke out around protests in Los Angeles, some on the left blamed it on Trump's harsh anti-immigrant tactics, while some on the right insisted
these are violent, Antifa and other criminals who are using the Democrats just as the Democrats are trying to use them.
And still others, including the governor of Pennsylvania, whose home was firebombed, are taking a broader view.
I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay.
Of course, plenty of critics are looking at the language of Donald Trump from his first term, his second term, and his campaign, that his language alone speaks an awful lot of enemies and people who have to be fought and people who are traitorous in his mind. They wonder if that's a catalyst for all of this happening. Whatever the cause, Jake, when you try to look back at the number of political violent incidents we have had in the past 8 or 10 years, it really is unlike anything that I have seen in my career, and I've been doing this for a lot of decades right now. And the question is, how do we get to an end of it? When a lot of people say this is about a culture clash where people are giving up on talking to each other and saying, I will prove it with violence.
All right, Tom Foreman, thanks.